Here is a love vast as the ocean, loving kindness as the flood. When the Prince of life for ransom shed for us his precious blood.
Hello, my name is Katie Palacios, and I'm married to Pastor Andy. We've been at Markham Woods Seventh-day Adventist Church for 2 years now, and we love our church family. So, my personal testimony really started from a young age. My dad is in business, and my mom is a doctor, and both of them gave me a love for wholeness and wellness. When I was a junior in high school, I remember waking up with the most significant pain. I was crying, and I wanted to hide it from my family. I had perfect attendance that year, and I knew I had to go to school. And as I got ready that morning and I walked downstairs, I couldn't hide it any longer. I told my mom, I feel like I'm dying. I feel like there's a sword in my stomach, and before I finished my sentence, I had passed out. My mom caught my head before it hit the floor, and I remember hearing the call for my dad and my brothers to come close. My dad and older brother carried me to the car, and I had heard my mom say to my dad, "Go straight to the hospital, do not stop. She needs to get there as quick as possible." As a doctor, I knew that my mom's words were significant and that there was really something wrong. We didn't get all the way to the hospital because we had to stop at a local fire station for an ambulance to take me the rest of the way. My right side was numb and the pain was growing worse. I remember saying to my dad, "Dad, I can't feel my right side. I can't feel my right side. Do you think I'm dying?" He reassured me that we were getting close. Once I got in the ambulance and I was transported to the hospital, there was a series of tests that were conducted. And I found out in that moment, when the doctor came in and he sat down next to the bed, that there was something truly wrong. He looked at my mom and said, "She won't need surgery, not to worry, but she does have a ruptured ovarian cyst." This was going to cause a lot of challenges for my future. Questions ran through my head. Would I ever be able to have a family? It was more than just a ruptured ovarian cyst. It was an arcuate uterus. And this diagnosis meant that childbearing was going to be near to impossible. And if I did actually get pregnant, would I ever be able to have a healthy and safe delivery? All of that was uncertain. Would I ever be able to find a man who would love me for my brokenness? I wasn't even sure that was possible. And I was only a junior in high school. After that experience, we were asked to follow up at the gynecologist's office, where he told me, "Don't worry. It's just, you're young enough. You don't have to fear for what the future holds." Yet I was still fearful. He said, "Wait till you get older and you want to start a family. Come back and see me, and we'll do more tests." Throughout those next 7 years of my life, there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't feel broken. One of my favorite Bible stories is found in John chapter 5, and it's the Pool of Bethesda. Jesus was coming on the scene. In fact, he wasn't even on his way to the Pool of Bethesda. He was on his way to the temple. And he passes through the Sheep's Gate, the Savior of the world. And he looks for the most pathetic case. The most pathetic case was a man who had been crippled for 38 years. He had been bound to the side of this pool with no one to let him in when the water stirred. I felt like that man. Absent, away from God, not whole. But you know what? Jesus asked him a question. In verse 6, he said, "Do you want to be made well?" And throughout those 7 years, I struggled with that question. Do I want to be made well? And what does that mean, being made well? Being made well, to me, was different than what I first imagined. I thought it was a restoration of brokenness physically, mentally. But the reality was, as I soon found out, that it was being made well spiritually. I prayed over those next 7 years, and the Lord sent me a man who accepted me in what I perceived as physical brokenness. He said, "You don't have to worry about what the future holds because the Lord has us. And if it is His will for us to bear a child, He will bless us. Nothing is too great for God." We got married, and a year later, we decided to revisit our gynecologist. And in that visit, I was anticipating a variety of different tests in that visit. I walked in, received my first test, an ultrasound. And I remember my husband was right by my side through the whole thing. I remember laying there and looking up at the screen because we could see on the TV what the image was like. And it was a lot different than what the ER doctor had drawn 8 years ago on a piece of paper. My uterus was not heart-shaped, it was not arcuate, it was a whole uterus. And I remember the gynecologist coming in and saying, "It's a miracle. It truly is a miracle." My husband asked me after that appointment, "Why didn't you start crying?" And my answer was, I had already been made whole. It wasn't an absence of physical brokenness that made me whole, the restoration of that physical brokenness, but it was a spiritual, passionate, loving relationship with Jesus that gave me confidence to know that no matter whether or not I was going to remain broken until He came again, that I was made whole in Him. And that's all we need in this life, is reassurance that God has already made us whole. So to answer the question, do you want to be made whole? I did want to be made whole, and Jesus had made me whole. So you might ask, what does it take to be made whole? You might feel as though you're still broken. You've experienced the loss of a loved one, a broken relationship, a recent diagnosis, or even a divorce. And the reality is, through that feeling of brokenness, you can be made whole. Jesus says, believe Him at His word, and it will be fulfilled. Jesus wants to give you wholeness today if you accept it at His word.
Of thy fullness thou art pouring thy great love and power on me, without measure, full and boundless, drawing out my heart to thee. Who is love will not remember, who can cease to sing His praise. He can never be forgotten.